Well, we're finally live after what, nearly 11 and a half hours of cricketing action, something Nikhil bhai would have loved to watch. We're finally here.
Yep.
हमने सुबह बोला था कि भाई कम से कम 10 बजे तक तो लेके जाओ ताकि रिव्यू हम 10 के बाद करें. Thankfully, the cricketing gods have heard us, and finally we had, if not two close encounters, two at least mouth-watering encounters, two encounters where we could actually watch both innings without really feeling अरे यार ये क्या one-sided चल रहा है. Although in all fairness, again England का वो second innings तो लग ही रहा था कि भाई यहाँ से तो जीत नहीं पाएंगे. Of course, we've got Nikhil Bhai. Gurkirat is unfortunately missing right now. He'll join us soon. Nikhil Bhai, let's start with the New Zealand-Pakistan game. Of course, the more interesting game, the game that happened in Bangalore. Bangalore playing true to its surface in terms of what we expected. High, a lot of runs, a lot of boundaries. Fakhar Zaman, that was some innings, right? Some knock.
It's very difficult to beat this one in what 2700s that we've seen so far. Very, very tough to beat this one because it has the context, it has the pitch. Yeah, you can say whatever ground it is, but yeah, not many teams win chasing 400. Of course, they didn't chase 400, but I mean, if you look at that exact halfway mark, they were 200 for 125.3 overs. So they weren't too far behind, which is just excellent from Pakistan's point of view. I think New Zealand tried whatever they wanted to, but it is just Fakhar Zaman was just batting on a different planet altogether. Kyunki, I mean, in those 126, there is a maiden. Although 81 balls may, there is a maiden that he played out of Glenn Phillips, and yet he's ended up with a strike rate of 155. So it is just absolutely Fakhar Zaman stuff, and I doubt anybody else would have done this from Pakistan. So I mean, just duly rewarded. जैसे हमने बात करी फखर जमान के बारे में कि he will have phases where he's consistent and phases where he's consistent in the other half as well. So this was a very welcome return to ballistic proper Jai Mata Di form. So very delighted for Fakhar in that place because part of folklore, no matter where they end Pakistan.
100%. Not too many batters sort of, invoke memories of Chris Gayle to me, but this was one of those. He just seemed so confident, and every time he stepped down the track, bhai, ye to chakka. Like that used to happen, at least in my case, that used to happen only with Chris Gayle. Only whenever I saw Chris Gayle stepping down, ki bhai, ye to ja raha. Like,
and it was also the areas. मतलब ऐसा भी नहीं है
Exactly.
कि he was looking to hit random places. नहीं, he hit Glenn Phillips down the ground and that
Yeah.
shot to Tim Southee. भाई
Oh,
that
yeah.
extra cover मतलब खत्म. Extra cover मारा मतलब भाई it is
True.
different planet.
Even Glenn Phillips, for that matter, like he hit him 2 sixes down the ground, so naturally it was expected Glenn Phillips will try to push it wide outside off stump. He anticipated that. Again, cricketing smarts sort of at its best. Good to see that as well. He, like Nikhil Bhai mentioned, not entirely a muscle sort of game, so to say. Gurkirat, of course, joined us. Gurkirat, Fakhar's innings. Nikhil Bhai and I, we were just raving about it and fanboying big time over that. Wish I could have watched it from the stands, but the TV was no less in that sense in terms of entertainment.
Yeah, you guys have pretty much summed it up. I'll just say one thing, that मुझे आज अपनी X Factor choice पे काफी फकर था. This had Fakhar as one of the X Factors, had Labuschagne as one of the X Factors, so both did well. Glenn Phillips, I thought, did well with the bat, but yeah, really today, I mean, yes, New Zealand have had issues with the fifth bowler, but I was looking at that breakdown where he faced some 46 balls and scored 77 runs against spin. But even if you look at it from the Pacers, he had 49 of 35 balls, so not much difference that way. I was thinking that why is spin being bowled at him, but he was smashing pace also. It was just that kind of a day, and it was a very good innings, not only because it led Pakistan to a win, because when he was going hammer and tongs, he was, because they also had that DLS score in mind, he was going at a rate where Babar could just be himself. And because had they lost a wicket at that point of time, then that DLS score would have changed. So that did not change. So he was anyway in when you bat like that, he batted at a rate of more than 1.33 runs per over. Pakistan required 8. He batted at 9.33. But it just allowed Babar to not do anything funny because they knew that train was around the corner. So there was that bit of smartness as well. And is just it's a, like Nikhil said, it's a innings for folklore. It will stay in Pakistan's history. And yeah, Kudrat also did its part. Uh, you'd feel that New Zealand were slightly unlucky because see, to had the full game happen, 200 runs are still a lot for a team to come back. They're lot. So, and maybe they were just one wicket away from, trying to tighten the screws, but it just never happened. And he had answers for everything.
100% that Kudrat ka nizam, like Gurkirat mentioned, and like we all have sort of ironically been mentioning ki haan aa sakta hai ye sab, but good to see that actually come to fruition today. And in terms of how the game played out, Pakistan of course needed 200 more runs in 24 and a half overs, and like Gurkirat mentioned, that's not an easy task. They might have gotten those first 200 runs fairly quickly, but then to be able to replicate that again in the same game, no, it doesn't happen too
Just,
often.
just something that I have to add here. There's a good possibility that after today's game, Pakistan wouldn't really have had, in terms of net run rate wise, they may not have gained anything because see, they conceded runs at 8.02, and if you look at their run rate, they scored at 7.84, right? So net run rate wise, they may not have gained anything, but they still won by 21 runs through the DLS method. So that tells you how cricket is sometimes a very nonsensical game. That on one metric, Pakistan have won the game, but they've not really gained anything on the net run rate front, and that's purely because net run rate doesn't factor in the wickets aspect, while DLS does. So some may call it interesting, some may call it be geeky, some may call it nonsensical, and some may even say ki kya paka raha hai. But it is just how, you know it beggars belief ki you have two metrics. One essentially measures what has been your margin of win, and the other is used to sort of decide that in such interruptions what would be your margin of win. So ideally, if a team has won, they should go up on both metrics, but it's just funny, or whatever you can say.
I mean, at this point, I'm pretty sure Pakistan would happily take the 2 points. So, given that, yeah, they
Not
again,
Pakistan's fault. Not Pakistan's fault. It just tells you that maybe the measure of net run rate is something that needs to be looked at, especially in ODIs where you need to have wickets also as a factor. It was something that was first brought up, I think, in the 2013 Champions Trophy, where it was a game between Pakistan and West Indies, and I think it was West Indies, or I don't know, one of the teams beat each other with 8 wickets down, but they had still 10 overs in hand, while India beat the other team, chasing a score with, with 10 overs in hand. And India, I think, won the game comfortably with 8 wickets in hand, but they had 6 overs left. So on the net run rate front, the team that won with with 2 wickets in hand and 10 overs left, they were better on the net run rate front. But all of us know that which team was far more convincing in their win. So just had this bit to add because I just feel that this is something that needs to be discussed.
100%. You can just add it to the list of videos and crises. That is cricket, of course, because it is what it is at the end of the day, and we love it for what it is. We just can't help it. But Nikhil bhai, before I forget, Fakhar Zaman century, of course, that is definitely one of the performances of the World Cup, not just the game. But before that, we had the pseudo homeboy, so to say, scoring a century, scoring yet another century in Bangalore. Something he'd spoken about earlier as well, that he would want to do well in Bangalore in front of his family and all of that. And finally, the Bangalore crowd also, apart from RCB chants, finally they sort of cheer for someone else. Goes on to show that he does have support here. But RCB, please mat lena isko. Nahi chahiye apne ko, apne team mein nahi fit baithta. But again, Rachin Ravindra, just talk to me in terms of what he did today. Fantastic knock, very fluent, very smooth.
Yeah, 100%. I think the thing that stands out for me for Rachin is the pacing of his knocks. We've discussed that in one of his previous centuries as well. That the acceleration that we've seen from him is been very good. Like if you scroll down to see, he got to his 50 of what, he was 51 and 53, and from there he ends up with a score that is 108 and 94. So he's got his next 50 again very, very, very quickly. It may not be as quick, but then he's getting there. And I think they had the platform as well to really go big, and they'll probably both feel that they left a few runs out. But it's just how massive the game is कि आपने 400 बनाए and फिर भी you feel कि भाई you left some runs out, and that's purely because of the nature of the ground, that you know that you can score runs very quickly. So I think they got a great start, I think, with Conway. They both were able to hit the gaps, find the boundaries early on, which is something we discussed. Okay, that is what is going to set the tone, and it did set the tone for them. I felt the surface was tricky, and it actually just gives you even more that on a tougher surface, New Zealand got to 400 without actually ever looking like they'll get there, because you almost felt that okay, there is some bit of indiscipline or some bit of poor bowling, but the shot making and everybody, Williamson batting at a strike rate of 120 tells you a lot that how good that knock was, and especially those extra cover lofts that he played. So it was a very good day. I think New Zealand did their best. They would have, I think, in such games, you want the set batters to really accelerate crazily. So I think that's where I felt they would have felt, had Rachindra stayed on for nice for me to do a Vakar there. Had had Rachin stayed on for 15, 20 more balls, or even 30, 40 balls, could have added 50, 60 runs there. Again, it's just from the angle of finding the boundaries. So it would have just probably helped them out bat Pakistan a bit more.
Yeah, but see,
Sorry.
I think this can only be said in hindsight, right? Because at the halfway stage, you take
Yeah.
400 runs. And see, also, this is the difference between, I think, batting first and batting second. Because when you're batting first, you just look at what the progression was. New Zealand were 125 for one at the 20 over mark. And from there, they started to accelerate. And they reached 211 by the 30th over mark. They crossed 300 by the 40th over mark. They were 307. So I don't think that New Zealand have really lost this game with the bat. I just think, uh,
No, see, the point isn't about losing the game with the bat. It is just
yeah,
a two-way street. K. At times, even despite doing so much well, you could still end up short because the surface got so much better to bat on under lights, and one guy was able to outbat you. So, and because you also know that your bowling is weak, you don't have a fifth bowler today. We discussed this in the previous well. कि सिर्फ चार bowler के साथ जब आप खेल रहे हो, and this is not a venue where you can defend scores. So I actually don't even find them unlucky of sorts, because I think they never kept that margin of error for the rain to come in. Because I genuinely felt that they could have just looked to, जैसे Pakistan was playing for the rain, they could have tried something else in terms of just tactically कि भाई आप थोड़ा और ओवर टाइट करने का देख लो, या you get bowled quicker earlier. You bowled Phillips, as we discussed in the internal group as well. You probably gave an extra over to Glenn Phillips looking to buy that wicket. So again, all of this sounds great and hogwash both in hindsight, but it is just how small the margin of error was that the other side had 9 wickets in hand. So, and the rate, and that's what I felt. Okay, even if it went deeper, they never allowed the rate to get to 10 or 11. And because it was 8, you knew it could have been managed better because they were breaking it down really well. So, again, it is just, I don't know, very harsh lines in that sense.
yeah, this is something I felt as well. Like even after the rain break, they knew that Pakistan were ahead on the DLS. And while not a lot of cricket happened, I think only 4 overs happened after the rain break. They still bowled Sodhi. Now that is something you could control because see, Saudi bowled only 5 overs for 27 runs. So the idea should have been okay, what if the rain comes back? What do we do? So I think maybe New Zealand wanted to play the long game because they felt that okay, 400 runs are a lot. He will keep swinging once he gets out because when you are swinging like that, you do expect you will sort of hit one up which would get caught. But yeah, probably I feel that first over of Glenn Phillips, which Fakhar played a maiden, probably that also played a part. But I felt after the third over, okay, I can understand even giving the fourth over, but Glenn Phillips bowled five, and then giving that over to Sodhi after the rain break, I felt ki this is where they felt nahi, we want to play the longest game. So yeah, that is something that they could have avoided. And Santner tried his best, but can't really blame him because he tried wearing his pace. But Fucker was just in that kind of, and these boundaries are not big. And maybe if Maybe if some other ground was there, probably slowing up would have helped. But yeah, I've said it before that sometimes when Fucker bats, he's not using a bat, he's using a hammer, and a lot of times that bat lift and that swing that follows. I don't know how many saw that 189 or was it 190, which he scored versus South Africa, where he was run out because Quinton did some smart play when the when he did not show him that the throw was coming at my end. Even if you look at that innings, in that innings, Shamsi was also there and Maharaj were also there, and they were trying to bowl it slow. But when he picks it that the ball's coming out slow, you just have to see where he's meeting the ball. He's probably halfway down the pitch, and from there he's smashing it. So a lot of power he has. Maybe he has a lot more protein than what Imam does. So
And either ways,
that's
to be honest, we can't really complain much about small boundaries because I don't think any of it just barely crossed the fence or something. So, 80
yeah.
90
It
वाली
just see, it's psychological. As a batter, if you know ki it's a 65 70 boundary, you are you're more likely to take that risk. But if you know a boundary is 75 or 80, so you might think twice. It's another thing that when you're going for it, you might even hit it for 90, 95, 100. But still, I'm sure that factor is there.
100%. So let us also sort of use that factor to our advantage, guys. We're aiming for 100 likes. So please make sure you've hit the like button if you haven't already. 35 of you watching, just 15 likes. Please
I
make
just
sure.
say one thing. I'll just say one thing, guys. Diwali's here. We are working on a weekend, on on a Diwali weekend. Please, at least validate it
Yeah.
through likes.
Please,
Please.
Gurkirat Paji ke is request ke liye kam se kam just out of sort of respect for that request, please make sure you do that. But since we were on the topic of Fakhar in terms of how he scored his areas, just look at that, man. Those sixes, monstrous sixes. Again, this wagon wheel does not really depict the distance that those balls traveled, but again, Nikhil, in terms of the areas he was accessing, you mentioned briefly about extra cover ke upar chakka bhi mara. He's also hit a four off Glenn Phillips, if I'm not wrong. Even those short and wide balls off spinners, off pacers, he was more than happy to cut. It was practically flawless, right? In terms of how he played today.
Yeah, I mean, you can hardly remember a chance. Can you recollect any chance that he gave? I'm not able to recollect a chance that was like, अरे ये तो सीधा हाथ में है, तुमने नहीं पकड़ा, या this should have just been taken, or a run out chance like that. I think a lot of familiarity also helped. He's played against this very side, these very bowlers just earlier in the year, scored 3 tons,
In
had
a
a
similar
had a
surface,
mammoth
Rahul.
score. Exactly, on a road as well. We discussed this in the preview, right? Okay, this is just the kind of place where he'll feel comfortable. Okay, I know what to do. I know the bowling. So again, that's where you kind of just feel okay, you did at this point of time. You feel even if the game restarts, you didn't see anything that will tell you that New Zealand had an idea how to get him out. So that is something that we again left to rue with New Zealand K against sides that are testing them. They're doing great in one discipline, but that bowling aspect is again coming back to haunt them.
100%, and it
And
also doesn't help with the
it's
injuries.
Yeah, yeah.
it's sort of ironical, or I don't know what you want to call it, because Nikhil's been calling for Mitchell not getting a ball. Mitchell gets a ball, doesn't even complete the over, match finishes. I don't know what to make of. It could be just a coincidence, but it's funny because maybe bowling Mitchell today ahead of Phillips could have been the better idea, especially again in hindsight, especially given how Fucker was going. But it's been surprising how Mitchell hasn't just got the ball yet.
Probably also a reflection of how their first bowlers, I mean their first bowling options have done well. Their first four, five, six bowling options have done well. And also one more thing
I'm not
before I
sure.
forget, in
I think
terms of
only first. I think only first four have, and that too not in the last four games. You could say. I mean, the India game was probably the last game where you could say that the four bowlers did well. There, I felt Henry was unlucky. Henry was unlucky. Lockie got wickets. Santon bowled very well, and then Bolt did decently. But India was still able to get some runs through the fifth bowler, and post that, so there has been the Australia game, there's been the the game versus South Africa. Post that, so lack of wickets for Henry or injuries haven't helped. So yeah.
Fair enough. I mean, we've already spoken about Fakhar Zaman and we've also shown the graphics. So again, I don't think it's pretty much an open secret that he is the top performer of the day, at least from our POV for the New Zealand Pakistan game. Let's quickly move on to the last segment, which of course is turning point, because a 400 v 200 game, but in such a way that the 200 ended up beating the 400 innings. Let's just talk about it briefly in the next segment. Nikhil bhai, let's start with you. 400 runs scored, 225 scored. Fakhar Zaman played well. Again, like you said, it was practically a chanceless knock. Babar Azam did a good job of playing second fiddle to him. In terms of turning points, what comes to your mind?
एकदम forced, जो मैंने पहले भी बोला, completely forced. Losing Williamson and Rachin Ravindra today together. Again, I don't know. I might be just clutching to too many straws, thinking 400 भी enough कैसे नहीं है. But again, the side is lost. There you went from 248 for 1 to 260 for 3. Both losing both set batters, never a great idea. The rest still did well. Everybody contributed towards the end as well. But I mean, that is क्योंकि उसके बाद तो the moment you got to 400 उसके बाद turning point मतलब फकर जमान ने तो आने नहीं दिया वापस गेम में. He never allowed New Zealand back in the game. So you still feel 400 would have been enough. So I don't know. Maybe the wicket of Abdullah Shafiq was a turning point because that had both Babar and them combined. And Babar also played at a decent knock. I don't think he was, as Paji rightly said, he was playing the situation. Fakhar एक end पे सही जा रहा है, so there is no need for him to. But he still went after Sander. Sander is yet to dismiss Babar as a. Sander dropped short. Babar hit him for a 6, and I think those things are very crucial.
Also pulled
That-
him for 4.
Yeah. So my point is the intent to hit him for 6 is to me catches my eye more because it is telling Sander that you cannot miss out. I'm not even looking to hit the cap. If you are, I'm more than happy to even take you on for a 6 because that's something you don't usually see with him so early in the innings. So I think that was also very key of Babar to show that intent. Okay, I will keep going, and that was still when Fakhar was still getting going. So I think maybe the rain was a turning point. Who knows?
Yeah, that's pretty much the only thing that comes to my mind as well. Gurkirat, what about you in terms of turning points? Are you thinking differently?
I'm just looking at the over by over breakdown. So because Pakistan was 32 for 1 after 6 overs, and then is where Fakhar started to go after the pacers. Maybe I think how he went after the pacers in the power play or bowled specifically is what probably got forced Kane to bring in because Santner bowled the 8th over, and probably him taking on pace very well and then forcing Kane's hand to bowl a lot of spin. But yeah, it's because I don't think you can 400 is a lot of runs. So probably you will have to say maybe the rain coming around because see, let's just assume that Pakistan had got to 240 at the end of 30 overs at the same rate, and they had then lost both Babar and Fakhar. New Zealand still had 160 runs. So 160 runs, 20 overs is still a lot of runs to come back. So maybe I think yeah, the rain interruption is what is what probably is the turning point. Or if you really want to be a little more critical of captaincy, you could say that trying to get overs of out of Phillips is probably sort of a turning point. But again, if you think about it, uh, there is no guarantee that any of the four, given how the kind of touch Fakhar was in and the way he was hitting them, that any of the top four coming back would really not concede the same amount of runs because he went after Sodi, he was going after Santner. uh, so yeah, difficult to really find a
Yeah,
particular turning point because,
it
and
is.
I'm not even sure if it's fair to do it because for one side it just
Yeah,
became a sort of a 20 over or 25 over game, so it changes a lot. I mean, had New Zealand uh, had the rain happened during the interruption, had New Zealand started the game knowing okay that they have to bowl only 30 overs or say some a lesser amount of overs, then maybe their plans would have been different, possibly. So really hard to find a particular turning point, because it's, yeah, you just have to say that Fucker was too good, and a lot of things like the weather worked in his favor, and New Zealand were probably not as proactive. That's about it.
And also,
Yeah.
one more thing to talk about in terms of the game itself. We've spoken about New Zealand's bowling, we've spoken about Pakistan's batting, even New Zealand's batting. But Pakistan going into the next game, it is a cause for concern, right? They're bowling. Shaheen going for 90, Haris going for 85, Hassan, if I'm not wrong, also going for 80 plus. How do you look at that? Like, would you just sort of blame the surface and move on? I mean, probably blame is too strong a word, but would you just sort of brush it past
No,
them
I
by
I don't think you can blame the surface, because it's not a one game problem. The problem's been existing for some time. Uh, I feel, I've been watching World Cups since 2003. I can't recall a more helpless or a Pakistan bowling attack which has lacked this level of potency. It's there was hardly, they were not even creating chances, and without going hammer and tong. See, if Williamson and Ravindra are able to sort of just keep accelerating without taking chances or without hitting a shot in anger, it just sums up how you also have to give credit to the batters, but there was hardly any challenge you felt. And see, I don't think, yes, maybe Babar could have gotten Wasim Junior early on, but there's so much only a captain can do, because Haris Rauf is not learning on the job from his mistakes. Shaheen had a bad game. Hassan Ali, couldn't really extract anything out of the pitch. So it's a sorry. The bowling attack cuts a sorry figure. But yeah, going into the next game, the bowling attack's cutting a sorry figure. But you look at England, everything's cutting a sorry figure. Batters are not scoring runs. Starts are not being converted. There's only Adil Rashid who's consistently delivering. Today, Vokes did decently, but as a unit, they're not coming together at all. And one thing you'll probably have to appreciate for Pakistan today is that they did not give up. See, sometimes you could have 400 runs on the board and you could just say, this is just too much. So we want to swing blindly. So it was not even that blind swinging that happened. So yeah, bowling attack has been poor. I don't think it's a one game issue. It's been poor by and large, because you felt that there was not even a plan in terms of restricting run scoring. We have spoken that sometimes batters are in a touch that you just look to bowl at one side of the pitch, but every 3 or 4 balls there was an easy boundary ball. So bowling's been poor by and large anyway.
I mean, it'll be interesting to see because they now have a 7 day break and then next play England in Kolkata. If the bowlers don't really sort of get into their act, then it might really sort of cut a sorry figure. ये सब तो बोलने के लिए अच्छा है, but then right now they actually stand a chance, a realistic chance at making it to the top four. So they would really want to buckle up and do well there. One last point before we move on. Darshan says the game reminds me of the 2015 World Cup semi-final. Faf's autobiography talks about how they were a little silly to set themselves up for a big total, and the rain interruption messed that calculation. Could have been the case today, but again, it wasn't like rain wasn't expected. The forecast was there. You knew how Bangalore was going to play. But yeah, I mean, again, all of this is in hindsight. So, like, a
What
lot of it.
happened to South Africa was far more cruel,
Fair.
because McCullum had gone for the jugular. Last 11 overs were remaining, and I think Bolt had 2 remaining, McLanigan had 1 remaining, and maybe Saudi had 1 remaining.
अभी
So
आज का एक
13
और मैच बाकी है. नहीं गुरकिरत भाई, let us first finish the game. नहीं तो हमारा प्रोड्यूसर अभी चप्पल लेके बैठा है वहां पे, वो मारेगा. Like Jaideep says, कुदरत का निजाम था. Let's talk about the next game. But to be honest, I don't really know England Australia के बारे में इतना क्या हम बात करना है, because it was England being England, it was Australia being Australia, it was Ahmedabad being Ahmedabad. Either ways, it still was a game. It still wasn't as bad or as one-sided a game as we feared. So definitely kudos to England for at least.
there's a good possibility that the England versus Netherlands game turns out to be the decider for the Champions Trophy qualification. Very good
Finally,
possibility.
something to look forward to in terms of incentives. We've been talking about थोड़ा relevance लाओ bilaterals में. अभी देखिए World Cup में 9th और 10th टीम के लिए भी relevance ला रहे हैं. बताओ निखिल भाई, he's at his happiest right now. अभी हर team कुछ ना कुछ के लिए खेल रहा है. Nothing probably pleases Nikhil bhai more than this.
भाई मैं तो बिना कॉन्टेक्स्ट के मैच भी देखने को रेडी है. कॉन्टेक्स्ट तुम सबको चाहिए तो लो.
No,
But
that's a good
you know,
point.
I'm just thinking. Okay, let's just assume that Netherlands lose to England, and then they have their last game versus India. India could really decide if they really want to. I mean, as an Indian fan, if it comes down to Netherlands securing qualification for the Champions Trophy 2025 and England going out, I wouldn't really mind India losing that game.
Wow, look at that. I mean, I'm supporting the men in orange in that sense. So yeah, let's hope. I'm all for Netherlands beating India and England for that matter, both of them. Fingers crossed on that. But again, talking about the England-Australia game, Nikhil bhai, let's start with you. In terms of X Factor players, if I'm not wrong, you'd gone for Smith, you'd gone for Butler. Smith did make a decent 40. I actually no, I take that decent as well. I take that decent back as well. Just say 40 because I remember feeling that he wasn't as fluent as we would have liked him to be. Thoda scratchy laga tha. Butler again, once again failing. How do you? Because what do you make of the surface? Do you think the surface had some demons in there, or because Zampar ने तो दिखा दिया कि भाई मार तो सकते हैं. He went through the line और छक्के चौके मार रहे हैं वहां पे.
नहीं पर यार जैम्पा का एग्जांपल है कि नहीं. I'll judge the deck because I think everybody struggled. If you look at the entire batting lineup, everybody struggled to find the fence easily. Struggled to find the fence. So had started off with 2 boundaries, then got stuck with Vokes. Warner hit a boundary, then got out. Smith and Labuschagne again had a decent stand, but then वहाँ पे भी I think Rashid bowled really well. Rashid has had Smith's number for a while, and he again got him out. And again, that ball just bounced a bit more. If you see him too close to cut, extra bounce mila सीधा Moeen Ali caught that catch, and then Labuschagne got out. Again, he also got a start and then got out. So I don't think it was a surface where he ever felt settled, because you see there are so many batters who faced who had starts 11, 15, 44, 71, 47, 35, 10, 10, and 20 to 29. So it's like everybody got starts, but nobody could quite get it higher. I think Green's knock along with Stoinis and then Zampa's finish just ensured Australia had enough cushion कि जो उनका पांचवा बॉलर था, it was always going to be dicey. So that innings for Zampa, and I just thank my stars that I made Zampa captain for the second game, because एकदम visualization वैसे चल गया कि because I expected accumulators to work today, which is why I went with Steve Smith, which is why I went with Joe Root. But with the ball, I think it was just Stokes who stood there, and Malan again had a start. But I don't think the surface was easy. It was a grind, and it was a grind for everybody.
Fair enough. I mean, even if we look at the match summary in terms of stats that Nikhil bhai mentioned, England also barring Butler, Best and Livingston, every batter that sort of batted today had a start. Unfortunately, none of them could really convert. Ben Stokes once again sort of वो मिर्जापुर वाला मीम याद आता है, गरम करके ठंडा ही छोड़ दिया. Seemed like one of those innings where he would take England home, one of those typical Stokes innings. Unfortunately, not to be the case. Gurkirat, what about you in terms of the surface and how it played today? Because like Nikhil bhai mentioned, at no point did any batter feel settled, despite getting a start, despite sort of spending some time there. How do you rate this Ahmedabad surface? Because going forward, the finals is also going to happen here.
It had some grip. It had some grip. So, and at times you felt it was too pace, which is why you see, when pace was being provided, when Mark Wood bowled well, but he still went for 70, and a lot of times he was cut, or or punched, because his pace, I felt, was allowing the batters to sort of time it better. And a similar thing happened with Stark also. So it was not a flat batting pitch by any stretch of imagination, but it was one where if you got your eye in, you could score runs. I thought Labuschagne batted really well, and post Smith's dismissal, he also started changing gears. I don't know if it was just me, but I felt his LBW was also unlucky. That's what I felt. Yeah. Uh, Smith, I have just lost count of the number of times he's getting a start and he's not converting across formats. Yes, the ball but you expect Smith to make those last minute changes. It was I mean, Rashid bowled well, but it was not a wicket-taking delivery by any stretch of imagination. What Australia would have loved is for Green to score runs, because I felt he really batted well, and the shot that he tried to play, it was on. So you expect those kind of risks to come off. Stoinis will also feel slightly unlucky because it was a ball to be dispatched. It was a short one by Livingston, was caught well. I felt, the way Stoinis was going, that maybe today he'll break that 50, uh, the 50 jinx, which has been, he's not scored once since March 2019. But yeah, Australia would really love this result, especially with the way they have achieved it, because it did not come through the opener scoring runs. Middle order chipped in. I said that, Marner scoring runs is important today, because if and when Marsh comes back, now we've heard the news that Marsh is going to join the team tomorrow in Mumbai. So that means, Labuschagne will still be there. And if he's going to come on these kind of pitches and score runs, it's going to give him a lot of confidence. The good thing is, you talk of pitches where, batting's not been easy. Marnus has got a start. He got a start versus India in Chennai. He had a decent innings versus Sri Lanka also. So a lot of got runs versus Netherlands again. So maybe, what they need is now that Marnus to get a big 100. If not a big 100, then at 5 big 100 is not possible, but just get a 100 if the opportunity is there. So, and then with the ball, Zampa was outstanding, because there was some due, but 3 for 21, the most economical spell for a bowler who got bowled out. And yeah, I feel his wickets, in fact, Zampa, both with the bat and the ball, was the turning point. His runs just gave Australia some cushion, because they could have been all out for around 250. So those runs just took them to 280, and then the wickets at what times he got, getting Butler, then getting Stokes, then getting Moeen Ali. I mean, you felt that maybe Moeen Ali could have avoided that, because there were overs of Stoinis to come, and there was space being bowled at him, and he was looking in good touch today. So, but Australia would really like the result, just the way they had to grind, because even in the end, you felt that there was still a chance with 3 overs to go. So they'd love how it wasn't an easy win. It was a win where they had to grind themselves, where Cummings' captaincy was also tested to some extent. So they'd take this win, and yeah, they'd be now watching tomorrow's game to sort of know who they play in the semis.
Fair enough. वहाँ पे गुरकीरत sort of not even batting an eyelid, एक ही झटके में टॉप परफॉर्मर, टर्निंग पॉइंट सब कुछ खत्म करके, अरे खत्म करो भाई, हम तो अभी सोने चलते हैं, टाटा बाय बाय करके बोल दिए.
मैंने डिनर भी नहीं किया यार, 11 बज गए.
वो समझ गया, वो 5 सेकंड में जैसे सब कुछ रैप अप किया, वहीं पे समझ गए हम. बट ऑफ कोर्स अनलाइक द फर्स्ट गेम्स रिव्यू, लेट्स नॉट फॉरगेट टॉप परफॉर्मर के बारे में अच्छे से बात करेंगे. वील डू दैट इन दिस सेगमेंट राइट नाउ. निखिल भाई, गुरकीरत already mentioned who his top performer of the day is. आपने तो उसको कैप्टन ही बना दिया था, तो I don't think even you would be sort of doubting that or second guessing गुरकीरत there.
No, bilkul 100%. I think Zampa's innings gave them that cushion, as we discussed. And again, 3 for 21, the control with Dew coming in, I think he'll take a lot out of this. I think Australia as a team will take a lot out of this win, because I felt they were challenged at regular intervals, and this is where I felt Cummins' captaincy also came through. Just more in terms of, if you look at when he got those key wickets, he brought himself on, immediately got David Malan out from the round the wicket angle, which worked like a charm. Because it allowed them to really get deeper into that game. Butler came on, immediately went to Zampa, 5 बार out कर चुका है, average 8 का है. तो as a captain, when you haven't had some great days, all these calls coming off are also very crucial for you, because then you are able to break the games at regular intervals to not allow the partnership to develop at all. Then he saw Stokes starting to get going, so he called back Zampa ke bhai tu dal, and then Stokes finally ran out of literal luck. Because sometimes I feel that's what this entire World Cup was. Let's try and push the luck with Stokes. Somehow it will just work out. But it's just apt summary. There were so many moments where I felt the entire England's campaign can be summed up in those dismissals. You look at Butler getting out to Zampa. It's a matchup. The guy is here to get you out. You are not doing well. You haven't even hit enough boundaries that you feel that you will come down and you'll just hit out of the blue. it will not. It's unlikely to come off. You look at Moeen Ali's dismissal, as Padi said, looking so good, hitting straight drives, hitting pace really well. Where is actually the need for you to go and why would you want to take Zampa on?
And I think it
You
was
did
Zampa's
not
last
even.
over.
I
I
mean,
think it
you
was.
don't have to. It doesn't have to be even told that you had an over left of the fifth bowler. You were targeting the fifth bowler so well, otherwise also, that you knew Stark was bowled out. तो end में हेजलवुड और स्टॉइनिस को आप मार सकते हो यार. ऐसा नहीं कि they can't be hit. And Vokes and Rashid almost did it. So it's not that they might have won, but in all of these moments, they just sum up how England just haven't been able to nail those things right. And it has to go down to the Zampa performance with the bat as well, that they were not able to close it. As Padi said, they get out for 240, the game is completely different. You approach it differently, you are more likely to take a bit more time. So I think England will rue a lot of you take the Liam Livingstone dismissal. It's just their hit great catch, but then these things will always happen when you're not in the greatest of touches. So uh, we know where England will go from here, but I'm really looking forward to what kind of personnel they select, because I don't think they gained anything by playing Ben Stokes and him scoring a 50 today. You have gained absolutely nothing out of that now.
I'd say the same for Moeen Ali. He's
Yeah.
not bowling. He only bowling 4 overs, and you would expect for someone who's been around for so long to show some maturity in the chase. So I I just don't know. I mean, I just think at many times in the game they have missed the pulse of the game. They've not really figured out and understood that when's the game slipping away, and otherwise also you just feel that there's been a lack of conviction in selecting the 11, because they, after the loss to Afghanistan, they made three changes. They made three changes, got Atkinson, got Willie in, and I think they got they probably they played a 7-4 or a 6-5 combination, right? And then they made all those changes again because they dropped Brook, and Brook probably got the most difficult delivery of all the top six batters in that game. The ball stayed low, and he had scored a good innings versus Afghanistan. So you dropped Brook, you went back to went back. I think you went back to that combination of playing all rounders again. And this is something that I've been speaking about England for 1 year now. You can have variety. See, I want to make this clear that I think you can have variety, you can have batting depth, but your variety and your depth in bowling or batting is not going to help if, say, your top four, top five are not doing anything with the bat, and your top three bowlers are not turning up. If your top three bowlers are not turning up, you can have, say, 7 8 bowling options. It will not make a difference, because they are seventh eighth bowler for a reason. If your top three skilled bowlers are not turning up, those who don't have the same level of skill, who are not used to bowling longer spells, or bowl a lot more, how can you expect them to bring you success at each and every time? It's not going to happen. So it's a fundamental flaw which I hope people also understand after this World Cup, that there is no substitute for quality. And if you think that you cannot have all rounders, or you cannot have that balance, just go with a 6-5 combination, eyes closed, and just back those guys to do it.
100%. And a couple of really good questions that we will take up at the end of the review. Just one more segment to go. Let's talk quickly about the turning point before we go into the comments and take a few more questions. So, yeah, right now, let's talk about the turning point in this very next segment. Nikhil bhai, once again, like New Zealand, Pakistan, there was no definite point, so to say, that you felt, jahan pe aapko laga ki the game turned, or sort of, whatever, however you want to put it. In this game, do you have any such points where you felt ki, haan yaar, this is where the game changed?
Game turned with Adam Zampa with both bat and ball. डिस्कस अपन पहले कर चुके हैं इन डिटेल कि हाउ दे गॉट टू अ स्कोर 243 फॉर 6-7 थे. Could have easily been done by then, but England were charitable, bowled some handy lengths and some handy shots as well from Zampa. Mark Wood got that edge that flew down to the fence, and then the very next ball, Mark Wood bowls a very full ball, and Zampa is able to clear his front foot and just hit it past the bowler. These are small movements where you just look at how ready the batter is, and that just showed in terms of the summary of the game as well, that whatever England had to throw, Australia had an answer. So yeah, Adam Zampa with both bat and ball, and rightly named the player of the match as well.
Mark Wood was actually, I thought Mark Wood bowled his best today, but he was just unlucky.
Yeah.
Had
Yeah.
Green in some sort of trouble, ball
See,
flying.
like that, even Harris Raw was unlucky. He got Kane Williamson to edge. And one went to the right of slip, one went to the left of slip. आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते उसका. But yeah, it's just wasn't their day.
Fair enough. Wasn't their days how Nikhil has put it. But yeah, let's take a few more comments before we wrap this up. Tomorrow is the all important game. India versus South Africa. Table toppers could potentially decide who's playing whom in the semi-finals. A lot of you have been asking us to talk about Hardik Pandya and who should come in tomorrow and I should Prasid play tomorrow. Guys, uske liye make sure kal sharp 125 1:25 ko aa jao. Nikhil bhai honge, Gurkirat hoga. If I'm not wrong, Avnish is of course hosting it. So Tino Renge, they'll answer your questions. I'll be more than happy to talk about it then. Right now, let's talk a bit more about Brook. Darshan right now asks us, for all the big talk they made about bringing Harry Brook to the World Cup at Jason Roy's expense, at the last second again, why do you think they aren't playing him when nothing else is going right for them? Again, something Gurkirat also briefly pointed out. He did play well against Afghanistan. He was probably their best batter that day. Got a really good ball, got out, but unfortunately was never brought back and once he was sent out. Nikhil Bhai, again, like bizarre, right? And so un-England like that way.
No, maybe it just sums up how England are thinking that if you look at that batting order, you can't drop Bairstow. Malan got runs. He's been scoring runs, so you can't drop him. Joe Root, I don't think we've discussed him enough in this World Cup. Continues to have a terrible average of 5 in the power play. How has the best ODI batter that England have produced just gone into a slump like that? No team is going to recover if your number 3 is going to bat like that in the power play. So that is there. And then at 4, you've got a guy out of retirement for a job. So if you tell him to not play, then you again question yourself that, but then why did we do that? Why did we get him out of retirement? तो यू सी 5 पे तो बटलर खुद है, 6-7 पे जब ऑलराउंडर नहीं लिए थे तो सब पूछे थे कि ऑलराउंडर क्यों नहीं लिया. So I think it is the lack of clarity and as said lack of conviction in terms of what exactly do we want these guys to do. And see, it's very one thing to say okay, go out there and express yourself, but it's not easy in the ODI format. You have to have the Moeen Ali ka 43 helps nobody. But then that nobody can also be part of a great scorecard if you have your top 3 scoring. So it is, I'm not saying कि उसको individually मत देखो, but that individually is not working out because the team is not clicking. So it was really surprising, which is why I said they could have gained so much more had Brook played a knock like Stokes did today. And I'm sure Stokes जितने साइकिल पे खेला शायद Brook उससे ज़्यादा बेटर पे खेलने को ट्राई करता और आउट हो जाता. But at least they would have still learned a few more things about Brook that they could have used in the future terms. यहाँ पे you gained nothing of that. तो अब time भी चला गया. So I don't know what you want to do there. But as I said, they would have ended up questioning themselves more. So they just felt, okay, let's not play Brook and let's just back these guys and close the World Cup out like that.
I also feel that even if they wanted to play Stokes, they could have had Brook at 5 with Butler at 6, because I don't think both Moeen Ali and Livingston can play, because both of them together are not one complete bowler and both of them together are not one complete batter. Uh, you can look at Livingston for more control. See, you just have to see the number of overs that Moeen Ali has bowled in this World Cup. I'm just pulling those numbers out. There's not enough confidence in his bowling, and with the bat he's never been reliable. I can't recall the last time he was, you could say that he guarantees you runs. And see, again, you look at those 6, 7, 8. You have Livingston, you have Moeen, you have Vokes, you have Willie, and then others. All these are good if they are coming in the last 15 overs. At number 6, you cannot have a batter who's only good for providing you finishing touches, right? You need one proper batter who can bat the situation. 50 overs is very long. It's not T20. So I've just pulled out. I think Moeen Ali has bowled 24 overs so far in this tournament in 4 games, and Livingston has bowled 29 in 6 games. So if you take their average, one is averaging less than 5 overs a game, the other is averaging around 6 overs. So they're not themselves bowling complete 10 overs between themselves. So I don't know how you can play both two such players at 6 and 7 who are who are not a fifth bowler, and they're not your proper batters either at this point of time. So there's a complete issue over there.
Some brutally honest sort of responses there from Gurkirat in terms of, why Moeen and Livingston together aren't really, creating the sort of impact that was expected of them. But just on that note, Darshan also asks us, why is Josh so obsessed with Livingston's bowling? Nikhil bhai, again, what do you make of that?
See, it's a good example to tell you why having a lot of all-rounders just doesn't always work out that way. Now, again, this could just be my hunch, but you saw how the ball play, and when the power play was done, England turned to Livingston first as opposed to Adil Rashid. Why? Because they were more worried about के अभी situation ऐसा है, these two may not take risk. Let's get some overs up. Now that is the problem when you are trying to get overs in, and that is far too early for you to get the overs in. The moment you got Rashid on, he struck, and that guy struck with the wicket of Steve Smith. So you do it earlier. It see, as Adi said, when you're trying to fit, it's okay to fit one person. You're trying to fit two people forcefully. Okay, let's try and get something out of them and see if they work out. But it will not work out eventually. The batter will have to play a horrible shot for him to get a wicket. So, and again, I could be wrong, but these are T20 instincts. Okay, 20 overs he hai, let's get an over in out of it. But 50 over is working at a completely different point. So the obsession is more with the let's get the fifth over ka quota out. You saw what Australia tried to do as well. They still bowled all of the main bowlers, and then they went to Head, and then they went to Stoinis, and then they were like, okay, it did not work out. Cummins was quick to go back. Okay, chalo, nahi chal raha hai. Got himself and got the wicket of Malar. So again, it also tells us a lot about how Butler is thinking and how sometimes just having certain options can make you think different. So as even you can compare this with uh,
I
at this point of getting Wasim later. Okay, you are still looking to get few more overs out of Iftikhar, and then you can compare the same thing with Tom Latham or Kane Williamson doing with Glenn Phillips. So you can see it's almost a pattern for the entire day that every captain wanted to get that overs out just so that they could have that cushion, which is fair. But if they don't work out, it will not look good.
And not just that, you look at the previous game that England played versus India. Livingston and Ali bowled 12 overs between them, which meant that two of your frontline bowlers did not complete your quota of overs. One was Vokes, who had a very good game. He bowled 9 overs for 33 and he did not complete his quota of overs. Mark Wood didn't. And between them in 12 overs, they gave 66 runs. Now, 66 runs you will take on most days for a fifth bowler. Okay, it's fine. But not in a game where opposition has scored 230. That's a lot. Because when the opposition has scored at 230, you have gone, your game run rate is 4.6. And these two bowlers have combined to go at 5.5. That's a huge difference. So, and again, there wasn't a need. It's just that instinct. Okay, I I don't think Moeen Ali's picked up wickets also in this tournament. I can't recall. And yeah, today was probably the only opportunity that he had to sort of win a game with the bat, and that did not materialize.
I mean, definitely just sums up the kind of tournament that England have been having. I mean, if we just look at the points table and the position there also reflects the kind of tournament they've had. No one even in their wildest dreams would have expected England after playing 7 games would be ranked bottom of the table. But look at just look at that. Netherlands, Bangladesh above them, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan above them. Goes on to show that, we just don't know. And personally, not that I am an English fan, the only silver lining is I'm just trying to be positive about it कि भाई मो बोबैट जब था तो इंग्लैंड अच्छा खेल रहा था, अभी गया तो नहीं खेल रहा, तो मतलब वही है, he is the reason. तो he'll probably change he'll probably
सवा
change.
11 बज गए, 11:15 बज गए. एजेंडे का टाइम कोई और ढूंढना.
मैं बाद में ढूंढता हूँ. But yeah, in terms of points table, of course, England down and out, and now mathematically also they have no possibility in terms of making it to the top 4. Not the case with Pakistan, not the case with New Zealand. Lots to fight for in terms of where Pakistan are now playing. They play just the one game, which is against England, of course, in Kolkata. That happens a good 7 days from now on another double-header day. That's, of course, next Saturday. So similarly, England, of course, their only game remaining going into the next week, of course, is Netherlands. Post which they play next Saturday again, 7 days later, against Pakistan in Kolkata. The Netherlands game, again, like we mentioned before, is not without its own incentive. It's not like this game is for nothing. A stake for a spot at next year, I mean, not next year, 2025 Champions Trophy is at stake here. So they would really want to play well and win the game there. Hoping, fingers crossed, that Netherlands are able to repeat their heroics from 2019 T20 World Cup, from the 2014 T20 World Cup. Fingers crossed they'll be able to do that. Australia, of course, they also are all but short of a spot in the top four. They now play Afghanistan and Bangladesh, two fixtures that you would expect them to able to sort of come home with those points. They play Afghanistan in Mumbai, so in terms of the surface on offer as well, it'll be in their favor. So you would expect them to really be able to be professional and get those 2 points. Bangladesh, abhi yaar, again, Gurkiraj will probably get upset if I just start talking about Bangladesh now, because that's how predictably bad they've been, to put it simply. There's just nothing going right for them. The two teams that I definitely don't want to see in 2025 Champions Trophy, of course, Bangladesh one, England being the other. Let's hope it stays that way at the end of the World Cup. But that's it from us in the review of the 2 games, New Zealand, Pakistan. New Zealand, of course, unfortunately not being able to win despite scoring 400. Probably the first time in World Cup. Of course, it is the first time. Probably क्यों बोल रहा हूं, मेरे को पता भी नहीं है. England, then, of course, as usual, nothing out of the blue, losing yet another game that they probably should have won. They were in winning situations multiple times, never really closed it out. Sums up pretty much the kind of tournament we had. Again, मतलब मैंने 5 मिनट में ही 3 बार बोल दिया sums up. That just goes on to show how bad it has been for them at every avenue. There's literally nothing gone right for them. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Tomorrow, it's of course Virat Kohli's birthday. It's November 5th. It's India v South Africa. It's Kolkata. Hopefully, the pitch will be tampered in such a way that we get to see a 450 v 450 game finally. Would love to see that. Nikhil bhai is already upset. Arre bhai, kya bol raha hai? Anyways, very interesting encounter tomorrow. First place, second. Lots to look forward to. And like we mentioned before, Nikhil bhai will be there. Gurkiraj is going to be there. Avnish will be there. Lot of questions. Pandya ka replacement, Prasid khelega ki nahi? All of you have been asking. Make sure you tune in tomorrow sharp at 1:25 to check that out. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us and good night.